Good morning. Happy Wednesday. It is the middle of the week. It's kind of good news because we have church on Wednesday nights and Saturday is only 3 days away. Yay! I am on my way to work, as is our custom, and I think we're going to do another case today, kind of bounce off of what we talked about yesterday in regards to Pathfinder 2nd Ed classes, but this time we'll do a little bit different spin on it. So, I'm Dr. Deb with the Established Facts. I'm a doctor, I'm a gamer, and this is today's case. So, how many of you have ever had the experience of going to a con game and you accidentally showed up with the same character class as like 3 or 4 other people? I don't know if it's ever happened that you accidentally got like 5 barbarians at one table or 5 rogues at one table. I would love to hear anybody's story. So if you want to post it onto our Facebook page or onto our regular page, theestablishedfacts.com, or put a comment down below and describe it, that would be amazing, because I've always wondered if that could possibly happen, because it's a con game. You just sign up and you show up. So what happens if you end up with more than one class at a table? But I digress. The real case is, in my opinion, what is the best combination of classes to make the best Pathfinder adventuring party? So, best party, and we're not talking about best graduation party, best Pathfinder adventuring party. I think you have to start off with your good old-fashioned melee class. You need something that can walk up to a monster or a bad guy and hit it, or slash it, or stab it. Then I think you need a good ranged fighter. You need someone in the back who can shoot things at a distance. If you got something that if you get up close you can get entangled in it, or if it has a special effect that goes off when you get close, you gotta have somebody from behind. You also gotta have a healer of some sort. And last of all, I think you need somebody sneaky of some sort. Now, I left all those pretty vague because those descriptions can be used in different classes. For example, a melee fighter could be a fighter, could be a monk, could be a barbarian, could be a druid if you build it to be able to do melee. More uncommon. I don't see a lot of druids doing melee, but you could work on building it. I'd be curious to see someone's build if someone wants to try it. A ranged person has multiple choices as well. You could have a caster, so a wizard or a sorcerer, because most of their spells go further than melee range. Ranger is the obvious one because they're ranged. Druid could also do that because I believe they do have some ranged spells as well. The druid could kind of float either way, I think, depending on how you wanted to build it. The healing person, now the classic one is going to be your cleric, of course. However, druids also have healing spells. Champions also have some healing spells. Bards can have some healing spells now, I believe. And I'm not certain if the new Pathfinder 2E, if sorcerers get access to healing spells. I thought they did, but I haven't played a sorcerer in 2E, so I need to study their spell list a little bit more closely. Or if one of you studied it more closely, let me know. Finally, a sneaky person. Again, kind of obviously, that could be a rogue. However, monks can have stealth, and they usually have good dex. So they could be a sneaky person. Now, they're not going to be a sneaky stabby person, they're just going to be sneaky. But you could still have someone who can at least scout ahead with sneak. You could build a ranger sneaky. I could see that. Seeing someone who's hiding in the bushes before they shoot an arrow at you. I think those are your big ones. You might be able to build a bard sneaky, but the bard, it doesn't really have as much damage that it can do. So even though he was sneaking, he doesn't have sneak attack like the rogue does, and I don't know if they're going to get that much benefit out of it, because frankly, the purpose of the bard is that they can inspire, you know, right? They bring everyone else to a higher level. So a bard sneaking doesn't seem that useful to me, but if you wanted to try to build it to see if you could pull it off, go for it. The other spin-off would be how many people in a party would make for a perfect party. Perfect party time. Minimum of 4. The list that I just gave you, the minimum of 4. But what about a maximum? Now, in con games, your max is usually 6. Sometimes they'll let a 7th in, but it's usually pretty hard and fast at 6. I've seen some homebrew games with a lot of people. I've seen some be 8, 10, 12. I think that's pushing too high. By the time you get into the double digits, I don't think you're going to have a good experience because you only have one gaming experience. You add more players into that mix, you're going to dilute the experience for all of the players. And you may end up having one player who monopolizes things because their skill or their abilities or their roles are amazing for that situation, and then you may have several other people that just don't get to do much, either because their skill ability set doesn't work with the scenario or because someone rolled better and so they did it better and therefore they kind of take the lead. And I think you could pull it off with 8, but you got to be really careful. The thing about 8 is you've got 2 groups of 4. So if you had somebody else who was comfortable not GMing necessarily, but corralling one group of 4 while you corral the other group of 4, theoretically you could have 2 smaller groups that are doing an adventure. That's how I see it to be the most reasonable in handling bigger groups. Then you could have a group of 12, but you probably need to handle it more like a 6 of 6 as opposed to the full 12 in the party, unless you've got a ridiculously OP bad guy that you want to throw at him, and all 12 of them need to be there to be able to manage it. Fair enough, I could see that. I already mentioned the 4 required classes that I think every party should have. Now, what about the would be nice kind of classes? Well, if you already have a fighter, you may or may not need the barbarian. I do think having a bard is helpful. I don't think it's required, but I think it is helpful. Because their buffs are nice, especially if you're early in a campaign and everyone's fairly low level. Those buffs can make the difference between a success and a failure now in Pathfinder 2e. Alchemist is a nice ranged fighter. I forgot to mention that during ranged. Not bad. The complexity of it is the reason why I hesitate a little bit. But if it's someone who's experienced, then the alchemists could be very powerful because they can create elixirs of life for healing, but they can also create bombs and tanglefoot items and things that will help in combat as well. But you have to be able to play them correctly. Druid, that could go either way too. They're divine casters. They have access to some healing spells, which is good. They're your nature experts. So if you've been told beforehand that your game is going to involve a lot of traveling in the outdoors, maybe you're helping a caravan going through some really difficult woods and terrain, I could see the druid being valuable. The struggle with a druid is if you build them a certain way and then you're in town, so you're in an urban setting, their value may not be as high. Now the monk, because they're melee, because their saves are pretty good, I can see the monk being useful in a lot of situations. They are divine, so they do have the divine knowledge. All 3 of their saves are good. They're definitely good in combat. Their AC is usually pretty good as well, because their dex is usually great. So they would be a good one to add on to a party if you don't already have a monk. So if you have it built as a fighter, rogue, cleric, and sorcerer, for instance, I can see adding a monk as a valuable thing, because you've got another melee fighter, and not only are they a good fighter, they're a melee fighter with good saves. Ranger, again, if you already have a caster ranged person, so let's say you have a sorcerer or a wizard in there, a ranger would be a good add-on, because let's say something has some magic resistance and they're not getting hit with the spells as well, an arrow might be an answer to your problem. There would be an advantage to having both a sorcerer and a wizard because they cast off of different skills. Wizard, high intelligence. So if you're in a situation where you're going to be investigating, if you're going to be examining a lot of things, if you're going to be some things involving like lore or little known information, the wizard could be valuable. Assessment, I think it's the same diagnosis as yesterday. Polyminutia character. Many details in characters. But this is a subsequent encounter, so we bill it differently if we're putting in our bill to the gaming insurance people. Plan. I think I want to talk to the rest of the podcast and ask them what their opinion is of a perfect party build. I feel like we've talked about it before, but I feel like it was in first ed. I don't think we've chatted about it since they switched to second ed. So I'd like to revisit the discussion with a second ed background as opposed to first ed. Second part of my plan is to study Pathfinder second ed characters in more detail. On top of playing them, I need to study them to figure out what are some aspects of them where you could build them in unusual ways. There's a classic build of all of the 12, but I'm sure there are some ways that you could tweak it with feats and modifiers and items that can help them to step outside of their normal limitations and perhaps be something that you didn't realize that they could be. We'll see what happens. I'm Dr. Deb with the Established Facts. I'm a doctor, I'm a gamer, and this has been my gaming consult.